Well, hey there, bike farmers. Thanks for clicking in. Ironically, as soon as I got done with the last blue Giant mountain bike, this one came through the door from a customer like literally 2 hours later, which is the hybrid version of that same bike. The really weird thing is it's practically the exact same story. This bike had been sitting instead of hanging for, I don't know, probably 2 decades. I don't know. I mean, it is coated with dust. There's dust bunnies everywhere. It is filthy, it's grimy. Everything just kind of feels a little gross. It needs a reanimation. So this one's gonna get tires, tubes, pads, and a tune-up. Really straightforward stuff. I don't think we need a whole lot of introduction. So kick back, relax, and let's get started. Gonna start by giving you guys a good look at some of the filth. You can just see how just straight up dusty and kind of gross everything is. You can see here on the front tire where it was sitting, and the tires are all cracked and hard as a rock, so we're just gonna replace everything. You can see the rust is starting to form on the handlebars and stem. I think this will clean right off with some steel wool, maybe not quite off, but we can touch it up and make it look a little bit better. So I want to address some of the feedback I got on my last video. I started out by checking the derailleur hanger on a bike. I wanted to show off my new Park Tool Derailleur Alignment Gauge 3, new DAG. So I'm just pulling off this derailleur guard, which there's no marks on it at all. I'm guessing this hanger is straight. There's no need to check this hanger, except that I got an overwhelming amount of comments. Let's just call it feedback, because I think it was justified feedback, and you're not wrong. But we're gonna check this hanger before truing the wheel. Now the comments were, you have to true the wheel first, okay? I understand, you know, if the rim is a little bit over here on this side and a little bit over there on that side, and you're using the derailleur gauge at those points, you're not gonna get a 100% accurate result. I get it. I understand why people would say that. I understand why Park Tool, or more specifically, Kelvin's video on how to use the DAG3. Here is the Park Tool DAG3. Why Kelvin says in his video that you should either true the wheel first or use the same spot on the rim. So I haven't seen the video, but I believe that he recommends that you start at the valve and then do one of these numbers and then go over here and then move your wheel back and use that same spot on the rim. Now, as long as they use the same spot on the rim, it's going to give you an accurate reading, right? Okay, now my argument is it's really not that big of a deal that you can just go ahead and assume that your rim is straight enough and use your tool and see here it's just off a little bit, so we're just gonna bend it out, and now let's just see. Yeah, it's the same here. Now, my argument is that it's never going to be off enough unless your rim is like bent, right? If the rim is bent, if it's wavy, you know, like you do one of these and look and you just see it and it's going like this, yeah, okay, you're going to have a discrepancy. But there's enough play in this tool going back and forth one way or the other, and in this, and I mean, here, let's get a close up. You know, this is what I'm looking at here, and just, I guess it's really kind of hard to show, but there's enough play this way that any kind of wheel truing that's like, I mean, wheel truing is, you're talking a half a millimeter maybe. By the time this little half millimeter or whatever gets way down here, it becomes like thousandths of an inch or degrees or however you want to measure it. It's just off by such a little bit that it's good enough. I mean, this is just, I've always felt like the derailleur alignment gauge is just to make it pretty darn straight. And having a perfectly true wheel or dish, somebody mentioned it being dished, really shouldn't matter at all. And it's not gonna make any kind of real life impact. Now, if you're one of those people that's really persnickety and everything has to be just so, and you wanna optimize every aspect of everything, then yes, true the wheel first, make sure everything's just exactly perfect, face everything on the bike, you know, I mean, just everything. Chase these threads, make sure that there's no play in your gauge, you know, calibrate everything, and then adjust your derailleur hanger alignment, you know, and do the job right. Or you can be like the BikeFarmer and make it good enough for who it's for and move on with your life because it's checked and now we can go ahead and tune this bike up. One thing that I think is important, and I learned this, you know, just because of the shop I learned how to do all this at, is efficiency. I like to be efficient, which means cutting the corners that can be cut. There are, and it's not really even cutting corners, it's just working smarter, not harder. I'm also a man of leisure and comfort. So I started sitting down to do the wheel work. Well, tire work at least. That is crunchy. So this has a really nice plastic rim strip that is totally intact. It's good to see that. Okay, this one is holding air, and you've heard me in the past talk about reusing tubes. I have no issue reusing this tube. However, I discussed it with the customer, and I told her, I don't have any issue reusing tubes, but they're only $9. And if you want to just start, and she stopped me mid-sentence and was like, I want new tubes. So new tubes it is. That, I believe, is also justified. I have experienced tubes just randomly failing because they get old. This one feels really good, you know, but I don't think it's really a thing. I don't think that we can hang our hat on it, much like the feedback I got about the derailleur alignment. It's justified. It's okay to think differently than me. Sometimes, not always. Okay, so this is a Giant bike, and I'm a Giant dealer. And so I have Giant PX2 hybrid tires here, 38s. I've started putting 38s on the hybrids instead of 35s. They all come with 35s, or came with 35s. The new ones all have 38s. I think wider's better in general. I like to put a little shape to my tubes before I put them in. I can tell just on these rims with this tire that they're not a real tight fitting pair. So having a little bit of shape to my tube is gonna help hold everything together. I'm paying attention to the tread pattern. It's an arrow that points forward, and I try to get the label to align with the valve. All things that are not critical, but just a nice little added touch, I suppose. Okay, and then I'm looking all the way around to just make sure that my bead is seated in the hook of the rim the best I can. I got, 20 pounds or so in there. Give it some shape, a little bit of pressure. Things look really good here. We're at 80 pounds per square inch. All you engineers are gonna get triggered if I call it 80 pounds of air. It's not how units work, BikeFarmer. This I know. Same sort of deal. Arrows pointing forward and skewers on the left side of the bike. Looking for my label and my valve hole. Okay, and while we're thinking about the wheels, when we're up in the rant stand, where I usually rant about things, I don't think I'm gonna rant today. I mean, maybe I will. You know, it's an election year. There's a lot of news. It's been, you know, a lot of turmoil politically. There's a lot to rant about. Been getting a lot of feedback about how I'm supposed to be apolitical. People are just here for the bikes, and you know, I shouldn't be expressing any kind of opinions in such matters. And for the most part, I don't actually. I talk about some issues that are often used politically to, you know, take a side, which is, you know, the political game. Like, you know, Frank Zappa said that politics is the entertainment division of the military-industrial complex. And that is so spot on. And I am interested in it. I do find it entertaining. I find it interesting. And especially today. I mean, it's historically relevant stuff right now that's going on. And so I do, and I think about it. I think about everything critically, and it matters to me, and I like talking about it. So, you know, when I have an opinion about the environment or about Donald Trump's character or something like that, and you decide to take it politically, and you're politically sensitive yourself, and that triggers you, and think that I'm like making some sort of political statement because of it, it's on you. It's not on me. Sorry. I'm just sharing basic opinions about things, and you know, if that reminds you of some sort of vote you've got coming up, makes you think that way, I don't know how I'm supposed to know that about you. You know, it seems like a you problem. So there, that's my thought there. That's my rant for today. Oh, also, back on the Derailleur hanger feedback. It was good feedback. I call it feedback because I learned something. I'd never really thought about it because, I mean, it just doesn't seem like it's a thing, but it actually is a thing mechanically. It makes a lot of sense. It's justified, and that's exactly why Calvin and Park Tool mention it in their videos. And I want to clarify, okay, that the BikeFarmer is not a how-to channel. I'm not claiming to show you how to do things. Although maybe I do present it that way sometimes. This is a watch me work. This is how I do it, okay? And, you know, I just don't want to be clear about that. I don't want any misunderstandings out there. Let's get each other from the get-go. All right, so this wheel is clean. This is the front wheel. And it feels a little slimy after that power wash. I'm gonna clean that rim a little bit. And then I have this emery cloth. I get emery cloth from framebuildersupply.com. You can buy these rolls of it. It's great. Frame builders use it to clean their joints. Okay. bit of a wobble in the front wheel, not bad. I mean, I'm looking at it, you're not seeing it. It's really hard to show on camera. It's not a camera angle I like to mess around with too much because it takes so much time. But it might be a millimeter, you know? I mean, that's the adjustment I'm making here. And you wouldn't know it unless you look for it, kind of thing. And that applies to the derailleur hanger too. You just, unless you're measuring for it, you're not gonna notice. So on these bikes, it's just not a big deal. Not a big enough deal for me to take that much time and consideration. Then again, it's also not a big deal to clean your wheels, true your wheels, put them on the bike, measure the derailleur hanger after. It's just an order of things. So maybe I should do it in order and not be so damn stubborn or feel the need to explain myself all the time. I don't know. How should I be? Just gonna be the way I am. Rear wheel does have a little bit of a hop in it. Not bad though, just a couple little spots. Pretty typical. Nothing out of the ordinary here. Okay. Filthy water bottle. We're gonna pop the cables out of their cable stop, Happy Homes, and that allows us to get closer to the frame with the rags. We don't have to like be threading the needle or anything. And I'm gonna skip the power wash. Just go straight to the Behold today, because it's just dusty. And let's do a little before and after here quick. Okay, so here's the filthy before. And the shiny after. Okay, well now we'll lube the cables. I'm gonna start at the front of the bike here. Start with this front brake cable. Just a little bit of tri-flow. Everything's all twisted up here. How did that happen? Huh? How does that even happen? I'm not sure. Must have been twisted up from before. I don't know. It's got a blue cable tip, so that makes me think that somebody had been doing something. These cables all look really clean. This bike had been stored well, just dusty, so probably an attached garage. Okay, so we got everything pretty well cleaned up. and a few things. Pretty well lubricated already. But now we get to make it a bicycle again. Ooh, I didn't lube that. It's like the most important piece of housing for the brake. There's no rust in it. Usually there's quite a bit of rust in these step-through bikes because this piece of housing, this loop down here, collects water, collects moisture. Not too worried about brake alignment yet because we're going to replace the pads. Oh, okay, so wider tire is hitting on the reflector bracket up here. Gonna have to address that. This is a very stupid problem. I think reflectors on bicycles are stupid. Nobody rides at night anyway. We're gonna have to remove this one. Put one on the handlebars. All right. I'm gonna drop some tri-flow and some key spots here on these brakes and the pivots, and then all of this is gonna get messed with when we replace the pads. And it's nice to have fresh lube so everything moves freely with less friction. So a 5mm fits in there, and a 10mm fits back here, and you can remove the pad. Like, yeah. And honestly, these pads aren't so bad. You don't have to do this. I just talked it through with the customer and she'd rather have fresh pads. All right, now the posts have like notches on them, marks that help with alignment. I'm gonna go 1, 2, third mark in maybe the second. Let's go third mark in. This can be really tricky. I see in the comments people are like, man, adjusting cantilevers is difficult. It's my weak point, and I get it. One way you can do it, and I might end up doing it that way, is okay. So this one I just tightened it down and it kind of naturally put some toe in there. We've talked about toe. I had another video where I was talking about squeaky brakes and about how I don't toe the brake, or I struggled fixing the squeaky brakes and it was like, just toe the brakes. I don't really like toe because it gives the brakes a squishy feeling. So I'm gonna actually take that toe out if I can. It can be tricky, especially with older cantilever brakes. Like, these are kind of rusty. And I mean, I could take them totally apart and try to polish them and everything, but man, is it really worth it? And the answer is pretty much always no. But anyway, what you can do is tighten it down, you know, your cable here, get everything adjusted, and then just loosen the cable. But if you tighten it down to the point where you're happy with how things are, it's a little bit easier to get the pads aligned. So I might end up doing that here. Let's kind of see what it looks like from the other side. Okay, 1, 2, third line. I know this is a terrible angle for you. You can't see a thing. It's terrible content here. But you can trust me. I'm just doing the same thing over here that I did on the right side of the bike. What I'm doing is the pad, you know, I'm looking at the gap right here and kind of matching that to this side. You know, I just want them to be as same as possible. Now, all that are the posts welded to the frame in the same place, you know, like, who's to say that the manufacturing tolerances are that tight with something that really is quite innocuous. Doesn't need to be a tight tolerance because there's so much adjustability with the brakes. Everything has to, you know, it's all a big system. You know, this goes back to the derailleur hanger thing. It's like, well, you know, how far you want to take this? I would say, like, on an old steel racing bike, you get it just exactly perfect, you know, like, you're gonna win the Tour de France, like, yeah, do everything right. But for most of us, good enough is good enough. Okay. Here's a test of my dexterity. Oh man. My left hand is like a vice grips. I mean, those feel pretty good. I'm not totally loving, it's such a tiny amount of toe. And like, I guess I could maybe try to make it a little better. So this is a really handy tool, brake tool too, BT2. Also known as a third hand tool. It really works well on zip ties as well if you really want to crank on a zip tie. So I have my anchor bolt just semi-tight, pretty tight, and then you get it adjusted. Crank it down. That's really good. It's got some good feel to it. It's not the snappiest brake, but it's really hard with this loop to get a really nice snappy feeling brake. A lot of energy is lost in this brake loop back here. And frankly, these Jaguar pads that I use for cantilever brakes, they're good pads, but they're not the snappiest feeling things in the world. But that is really quite good. And then we'll re-tip the cable. Tuck her out of there. Tuck her out of the way. Do the same treatment here to the front. Kind of lube things up. Just makes it easier to work on. One, two, three. Okay. Adjust the tension. So there's something going on there. They got the tension maxed out. Looks like the wheel isn't quite centered. Oh, that was it. So the wheel wasn't centered because the reflector bracket prevented me from installing it the whole right way. So it wasn't seated in the dropouts, there are the fork ends. Doing a terrific job of explaining things. And that allows these brakes to get adjusted perfectly. Ooh, listen, shh, shh. Oh, so good. Don't let your wives see that, boys, or they will leave you. For me. That is a satisfying touch. Squeaky. Not squeaky. All right, so there's a bit of rust on these bars and stem. I got some light steel wool here. Probably 4/0. Man, does that clean things up. Whew. Boy, howdy. This is that same rag I used to clean the frame, so it's still got some hold on it. I can just kind of give this whole situation a good working. Oh, man, that has not been turned for a long time. I'll do a little wiping as we go here. Oh, you know what we forgot? We should put back is our derailleur protector. The protector of all things Derailleur. The spring is getting in the way of the skewer spring. This is not as straightforward as I want it to be. See if that'll sit there. Pointy side in with the springs. Say it with me. Pointy side in. Just a little tighter. There. That's not something you see too often on an adult bike. All right, so this grungy, goopy, semi-rusty chain will hit it pretty hard here with some one step. Feels like there's a sticky link in here somewhere. Maybe? Yeah, right through here. Some sticky links. Let's see if we can just unstick them with our hands like this. Nope, there it was. I could feel it. Yep. Where was it now? Here it is. Ooh, it's this one. Very sticky. So, I just grab a couple pliers, a couple pairs of pliers. Then you can kind of go back and forth too. Just try to unstickify it. It's just like a waxy buildup of gunk over the years causing that. Everything needs to be woken up. The magic sauce here. Goopy, drippy, filthy, slimy. Oh, now it's working. Now we're cooking with gas. Yeah, that one step really is good stuff. I like it. And it dries pretty good too. All right, now I can tell that we got some adjusting to do in the derailleur. I'm guessing that the limit screws are okay. But if I give it one click, it's really slow to shift. So we're gonna turn this barrel adjuster out lefty-loosey, which pulls it out, which lengthens this housing, which essentially tightens the cable. So coming down, it's pretty quick. Going up, it's still a little slow. There's a barrel adjuster up on the shifter too. I just did the same thing to it. Pretty good. Pretty good, pretty good. Okay, now I'm gonna focus up here on the front. Okay, I'm gonna shift way down in the little one and feel my cable. So the cable is super tight for some reason, but not tight enough. Okay, so we gotta do some adjusting. So I can see it, but you can't, but there's a huge gap between the chain and the inside of the inside cage here. So I'm gonna turn in my low limit, which will limit how far the derailleur will relax towards the frame. And I'm gonna set that low limit so when we're in the granny gear, the big cog, there's just a slight gap. Okay, like 1.5 millimeters. And then I feel my derailleur cable down here, and I feel that it's actually loose. So we'll grab our wrench and finger tight. I'm pulling on the cable. I call it finger tight because my right hand is not a vice grips like my left hand is. No, that's not true. But, okay. Okay, and it was a little hesitant to come down. So I'm gonna back this limit screw out, and that's gonna relax the derailleur in a little bit. Okay, we get a good shift there, and I want a slight gap on the inside one when I'm in the big ring. Now I'll go down to the little ring, and I want a slight gap on the inside of the outer cage. Okay, we got that too. Make sure there's no rubbing there. There's a little bit of rubbing there, but no overshifting. The high limit is set. So up on the shifter is a barrel adjuster. I'm turning it out about 1.5 turns, and that got it to stop rubbing. So we're gonna check here. Okay. There it's rubbing a little bit. Turn it in 1/4 turn so it stops rubbing. Gotta turn it in another 1/4 turn to get that to shift faster. And that's as good as it's gonna get, folks. Okay, set it in middle and middle. Having some compressed air is a nice thing to have. You can get at some nooks and crannies that are tough to get at with a rag. And if you've never done this, oh, feels so good. I tell you what, folks, this really turned out great. These are great bikes. This actually says 96 on it, so I know that this is from 1996, which was the year that I started working at Budget Bicycle Center in Madison. Well, the summer before my sophomore year of college, and I learned how to do all this stuff. And these bikes were brand new. They sold like hotcakes. I think the year after they started making them out of aluminum. That was a big deal. Then they started coming with front suspension. That was a big deal when hybrids came with front suspension and V-brakes. They even made these dual suspension, the DS, the Cypress DS. Had this like mechanism back here. Pretty cool, springy. I've seen those around too, and they're still great bikes. And that's it, folks. We got new pads, new tires, new tubes, and good cleaning and fresh lube on everything, good adjustment. This bike is good to go. Now, she probably could have just put in tubes and gone for a bike ride. It wouldn't have functioned real great. There was something going on with the cabling up here, so the front brake might have been an issue, but I guess my point is there's rideable and there's right, and then there's optimized. And we can optimize everything, like true the wheels before we adjust the derailleur hanger. Things like that can happen on these bikes if you really want to spend all that time and really optimize it. You can check every single spoke for tension and make sure everything's even, and You can go nuts, right? But you don't have to. But I always tell my customers there's rideable and there's right. And just put in some air in the tires, or just getting it going, knock the cobwebs off and go for a bike ride. She could have done that for much cheaper. So this service was a $200 service or more. But I would sell this bike in this condition, refurbished and everything. I'd be at $349 on this bike. Worth every penny in my world. And I hope it's worth every penny in your world too. I do still have to find a front reflector. I just remembered that. So tell me about it in the comments. If you stuck through it until the end, well, thank you very, very much. I think about this a lot, that what I'm doing here on YouTube, I'm in the attention industry, that what I'm doing here is trying to attract your attention for advertisers. And your attention is the most important thing here. So thank you very, very much. It's not lost on me. I really appreciate it. It's enough, is what I'm saying, as far as expectations go. Now, to exceed my expectations, you can always send a super thanks. Send me $5, $10. We call it taco money around here. I love the tacos across the street. But actually, it puts food on the table for my kids, and I use this income to live on. I'm not like independently wealthy or anything like that, although I'm hoping to get there someday. And I'm going to get there through sustaining monthly memberships. So you can give me one of those. It's like $5, $10 a month. You don't even have to think about it. You just set it up, auto pay. It's right here in YouTube. And that will sustain the channel forever. As long as I'm getting paid to do this, I'll do it, because it's kind of fun and I love bikes. And for yourself though, what you can do is click that notification bell so you and your bikes can stay tuned.